All right. Welcome to episode 36 of the Talking Shit podcast. I am Dr. Evil Genius.
And I am Captain Paul.
And I don't want any part of Captain Paul in me. And I'm pretty sure that the same goes true for how Ukraine feels about Russia. But before we get into all of that,
That segue.
before we get all of that, tell me how you been, Paul.
I mean, I've been pretty good. Just
That beard is strong, man. I'm liking the beard, man.
appreciate it. The girl loves it too. Something to pull on, I guess. But I think
Also, a little bit of extra friction when you go down below.
yeah, I know she likes it. It's been good, man. I've been getting with the fitness stuff. I kept with the diet. Pretty well, not really a diet, just kind of the way I was eating. I changed it, more regular schedule. I've actually noticed some improvements. Played some pickup hockey the other day too.
Talk to him.
And that was going really well until some fucking asshole decided, like, you know what? I can't get this puck off him. So I'm going to use this stick like a fucking hacksaw.
And shove it up your ass.
Oh, bro, no. You know what?
It would have been better if he did.
He probably because at least there's padding there, right? He fucking hit me right above my glove, right below my elbow. And, bro, like, he two-handed me extremely hard. Now, mind you, this is pickup hockey. And this dude is, like, acting like we're playing for a fucking contract. I was so pissed. I dropped my left glove. He's like, motherfucker. I grabbed him with my glove because he had, like, a cage on. I just started, like, punched him, and I rattled his helmet around. I just kept twisting it because, like, you're pretty much at my mercy at that point. And I'm like, dude, I was so mad. I was like, you stupid motherfucker. If you guys actually had to break us up. Because I don't know. I don't know what he was trying to prove. We're just trying to get some exercise, play some pickup hockey, and this dude's out here fucking saying like, "Oh, you're gonna make the team."
Who is he, Ty Domi? Like,
bro, I was so dude, bro. Like, I was so mad. It took me and my will strength, like, just to not straight up fucking keep slamming his head into the ice because I was so mad. But that aside. It went pretty well. The first like 30 minutes went really well. So then I had to go to the fucking hospital because I thought I broke the fucking wrist or had a fracture because, dude, I couldn't close my hand. I was like, oh, this is awesome.
And when were you at the hospital? When were you at the hospital?
I finally got there around like 9 o'clock. No, I was there. Yeah, it was around the 8:30. I checked in, got there. Like I was in the waiting room for a couple hours. And then I was finally getting x-rays probably just around 10.
And what we were supposed to be doing at 10 o'clock?
We were supposed to have a session to work out. Oh, I was so pissed. I'm like, this fucking cocksucker. Because I'm like, in my head, I'm like, oh, great. Now I'm out fucking this mountain. I'm like, God, fuck. I don't know. It was an interesting day. And then I woke up the next day and my wrist felt worse. So, but it's slowly improving.
Yeah, it's fucking like, dude, relax. It's like these dudes in any it seems like you're seeing the same shit in any online video game where dudes are like, I'm gonna make it pro. Let me act like a dick. And it's like, yo, relax, son. It's not that serious.
No, dude, it's like, okay, like you're playing pickup basketball and you have that one dude that thinks he's like a fucking,
Dennis Rodman and shit.
Yeah, like thinks he's gonna be the next big thing out the fucking burbs. It just pisses me off. I was like, it reminded me of this one time I was playing basketball, dude, this white kid. And I said this because I was chirping him, and like he's all geared out and stuff like that, just hustling, he's diving for the ball. I said, bro, listen, you're white and you're 5'11". You ain't gonna make it. Relax.
Oh, like, shit.
Calm down, bro. And he's like, what do you mean? Like, I'm trying to, like, I'm just trying to be, competitive. I'm like, dude, you're trying way too much. Like, you're diving on the pavement for the ball. It's not that serious, bro.
God. No good. Jesus. You want to show off that wrist bruise?
It's not even really bruised that much. Like, it's kind of like, because he hacked me right here. It's kind of like I'm pale, but
it looks a little greenish in that spot.
It's not the greatest because he hit me like right here, like right on the fucking nub of the bone. And like my hand, like it was swelled up for a bit. I've been taking some ibuprofen, but like the problem I have is it's like trying to fucking close it. Like it's not the greatest. Like I can force
you
it.
can force your hands closed, right?
Yeah, but like it sucks because it's like I'm so used to like just like, there's a few times I went to go get like.
I mean,
a
it's
pitcher
better
of
than your
water,
right wrist though, because
yeah.
guys got to do what guys got to do every now and again, and
Would have been nice to have a little stranger danger, just saying, but so but that aside, it's just it is what it is. Fucking douchebags being douchebags. But I think there's my injury side, I think we have some bigger things going on in the world right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I will say this. I did get some inspiration from you and the ladies over here and some of my clients. A lot of the cardio that I get is from high volume weightlifting.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of December, I was just like, you know what? It would be really, really awesome if I could get like a really nice basketball, because the building that I live in, they have like a full court basketball court thing going on in there. It's pretty nice,
That's sick.
Yeah, it is. And like I wanted a really nice basketball. I had a street ball when I was like, I don't know, 13, 14 that my mother got me, that was like hard rubber. I think I jammed my fingers on it a few times. Right. So, Spalding used to make the balls that the NBA used on the court.
Yeah.
Like the actual game balls.
Yeah.
And I think like in the last year or two, they switched over to Wilson. So I was just like, let me look on the Wilson website and see if I could get like a real, like a actual, not like a replica, because they have replicas that cost like $50 or $60, but a couple of weeks ago, I was just randomly playing around. Let's just check the website real quick. And I went, and there was, I guess, at least one that could be ordered. And I finally got it.
Oh, shit.
I finally got it. What is it? I don't know, sometime last week, I guess. Yeah. So I finally got like an actual official game ball, not the replica series or anything like that. But it's really, really hard to get. These sell out so quickly.
Yeah.
They sell out so extremely quickly. That when I jumped on it and then I went to go show Mrs. Evil, I couldn't, because you couldn't buy it because it was back to sold out, like either later that day or the next day. So
that's pretty funny.
So like, of course we put it up on the channel the other day, about me getting the new BM. And I guess we'll talk about that later on in the show. But that basketball might be my favorite possession right now. And now I've kind of committed to shooting around for at least 30 minutes every other day. So, it's definitely going to improve my fitness in and out of the gym.
Yeah.
In and out of both gyms, really.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm really excited to have that go on. Now, as you were alluding to, there's a lot of things happening in the world right now. Well, there's only really one thing that's happening in the world, and that thing is having a lot of related consequences.
Yeah.
For the rest of the world. And there's been so much talk about trying to head off a lot of, whatever this is, trying to head this off. One of the things that I thought was pretty interesting was, the United States over the past 5 weeks or so has just been ratting on Russia pretty much every day, like, oh, they're going to try to do this. Oh, they're going to try to do this. Oh, they're going to try to do that. And I think that, whatever you think about the United States being Team America World Police, I think that they probably prevented some people in Russia being killed by their own government as a pretext for Russia invading Ukraine, because that's really what was in their playbook. They were going to try to claim that, Ukraine, killed a bunch of women and children in Russia when it was really their own government. And the United States was like, we're going to rat you out before you do that, because only we're allowed to kill our own citizens and claim that some other country did it as a pretext to invasion. But that's neither here nor there. What has been your view of this before it culminated into actual invasion earlier this morning?
Well, if anyone knows the history of that Eastern Europe, listen, Putin always had this in his wheelhouse. This is something he always wanted to do. He wanted to gain back territory that he believed was rightfully Russia's. And there's an argument you can make, and I think it was in 1991, where the NATO, I should say, overstepped their boundaries when it came to creating country lines. And they took away, like, in what Russia viewed as land that was rightfully theirs, to make an own sovereign country. That being said, with what happened, it's very sad. A lot of this was getting played up over the time. I think, unfortunately, due to how the U.S. has been kind of doing their business on the world's scale here for a little bit, especially since past year and a half, becoming more energy dependent on other countries, less manufacturing of our own goods, less production of our own oil. This is going to be a very, very interesting war. Russia doesn't have the money to sustain a worldwide conflict. That's not something that they can really sustain. That now, obviously, they can give a lot of damage to us if they want to go that route.
I mean, Putin is unofficially the richest man in the world. So,
but if you
but it's not enough to wage war against 35 countries.
No, it's not enough. And I would say, even in a vacuum, if you just said U.S. and Russia, that's not necessarily a war Russia wants to fight. They're going to need allies. They don't have the economic backing to sustain a long war effort. For whatever you want to say about the military,
they may not have the numbers either.
Yeah, they don't. But whatever you want to say about the U.S. military, we spend too much. Well, cases like this is we do have so much technology. We have so much weapons in our arsenal. Generally, people don't want to fuck with us. So this is going to be kind of interesting to see what we do. Are we just going to do sanctions? Are we actually going to put troops on the ground? Like, what is going to be the game plan here if Russia keeps going? Like, Russia just took back Chernobyl, right? They actually have.
You're going a little bit, far ahead. You're getting a little far. But you're a little far.
But I'll just wrap up before you get into the articles. This is going to be interesting play for Russia, because I feel like this step is essentially kind of saying, like, well, you know what? Fuck you and your NATO. Fuck you and your thoughts. And they're just going to do what I want. And anyone thought that this wasn't going to happen in the long play, especially with a president like we have now that I feel like is very weak. It's just, it was, to me, I thought it was inevitable. I just, what are we going to do? We're more dependent on foreign energy than ever before. So guess what Russia is like? Oh, you know what? All these countries I support, supply LNG, oil, gas, all that. I'm going to cut them off. And I'm going to affect the world market, because Russia can do that. They're a big exporter. So
I got to push back on the whole weak president thing, because Russia was making moves before Biden was in the White House, right? So, people want to blame, who is it? They wanted to blame Bush, the second Bush, because of what happened in Manhattan and Pennsylvania and the Pentagon in September 2001, right? Because he was the president at the time. right? But the thing is that those plans were already in the works long before he was ever elected. You got Biden, who's just been in office for about a year. They did not take over Crimea when Biden was in office, and Trump was accused of being too Russia friendly throughout his entire 4 years.
See,
so how can we say, oh, it's a weak president?
So you're misconstruing what I'm saying here. That like I'm thinking Trump was the godsend when it came to foreign politics. I don't either. We both.
No, I'm saying you're saying that there's a weak president, but it's like all the presidents seem to have been weak on the same level
because he weakened us in a lot of fields he shouldn't have. Right? I know
but who?
Biden getting rid of our energy supply, whereas we could have been the leading exporter of LNG. This is what people don't understand, is that we could have been the lead exporting of LNG if you didn't have Biden shut down things because he wanted to fit a certain agenda, right? And I know people want to, carry out their campaign promises, and we could have a greater argument if you want to go into the history of U.S. and Russian politics, because there's been a lot of faux pas from both parties. It's not just a Republican-Democrat thing. It's just poor foreign policy when it comes to dealing with Russia in a lot of aspects, where a lot of presidents were way too soft on Russia, and sometimes they were way too hard, where you had Russia almost at the brink of causing a nuclear holocaust. But that aside, I feel like Biden has weakened us, right, from an energy standpoint. I think it's always good to get into this alternative energy. I'm not one of those people that think we shouldn't explore it, but we shouldn't handicap ourselves at the knees where we're so dependent on foreign countries, where unfortunately we live in a bad and scary world where this stuff is going to happen, and that we're going to see, a cut in supply from oil, gas, LNG. Like, it's just, as someone that works in the energy circle and kind of knows what's going on there, and how essentially we're giving away LNG for free to India, right? And we could be actually a massive exporter. We have enough energy in this country, right, that we wouldn't necessarily be needing to be dependent on anyone. But due to politics, we're just like, you know what, that looks bad, so we're just gonna cut ourselves off by the knees and then become dependent on foreign powers.
I mean, I think that if you could do offshore drilling safely, I'd probably be a proponent of that. I'm not a proponent of fracking. Fracking has poisoned a lot of communities, has poisoned the water supplies, has destabilized land masses in our, here in North America to cause pseudo earthquakes. There are a lot of penalties to pay for fracking, so I'm not a fan of the fracking. But if you could do some safe offshore drilling, and I remember what happened with BP. What was that, like 10 years ago?
But I have to, like, the BP thing, right? That was human error, right?
Because that's what I said. If you could do it safely, but then I'm in support of that.
The problem is like anything man-made, there's going to be accidents. And I'm not like lessening it. That was a major fuck up, and BP's paid for it because you had idiots that like, I'm just going to ignore this alarm for like the next couple of days. Like, it's just, if you read the NTSB report, it was clear negligence, and those people shouldn't have even been on.
They ignored a lot of warning signs. They ignored a lot of safety protocols. Yeah.
And as for fracking, there has been advancement in that technology where there's been less effects on the soil. I get what you're saying, especially in the early part of fracking where it was destroying water supply and stuff like that. The problem with fracking, though, I mean, one of the benefits,
you can't get away from the geothermic penalties, because you're removing a large mass, so that the ground that's above that now becomes less stable. There's really no way to get around that,
right?
From a physics standpoint.
But I'll say this with fracking, it's kind of like I said, it's just, we could actually frack enough where we would be the number one supplier in a lot of energy in the world, just because of the amount of mineral deposits we have.
But you know that there's a penalty. You can't have it all. And are you prepared to sacrifice what you're going to sacrifice to make that happen?
It's weighing the pros and cons. And if you want to go deep, deep oil, because I'm not against that. If you want to go back deep oil, you can, because I think there's a big, lot of misunderstanding when it comes to deep drilling because we've done that for years and there's barely been any incidents. I'm fine with going deep oil, but it's just at the same token, it's like we just got to stop being so energy dependent on foreign countries because it's hurting us. So that's where I'm trying to transparent. I'm not saying Trump was the perfect person dealing with Russia, but I will say this with Trump. Trump was a little fucking kind of crazy. So I don't know. I'm not saying that.
I thought he was a little bit too chummy. He was a little bit too chummy, and I think that was one of those things that emboldened the Kremlin. It's just a little bit, and the thing is, Putin was making moves all throughout that time, and Trump will check the liberals. He'll check them, but any move that Putin was making, oh no, it's not really that big a deal. So that's when you say a weak president, it's kind of like, well, wasn't Obama weak in his own way? Wasn't Trump weak? I think Trump was probably the weakest of them all because he didn't stand up to them on anything. He didn't stand up to them on anything, on any issue.
I wouldn't say anything. There was some cases that I don't recall it off the top of my head where he actually kind of pushed back on Russia. But I will say I haven't necessarily been the biggest fan of how Biden's weakened us. And like I said, a lot of that stems from the energy output because that's what's the most important in a war.
Well, I think that all of these presidents actually played a role into where we are today, because if Obama's foreign policy wasn't what it was, Crimea would probably still be a part of the Ukraine. If Trump, wasn't trumping, I think that that does not embolden Russia to then look at who won, and everybody looks at Biden as a geriatric joke. Yep. So. And I think that is true around the world, even with the American allies.
Well, and that's what I'm saying with like weakened president, just like from energy standpoint and just from optically, like that's a guy you can feel you can take advantage of.
But I think
that's
Trump,
why he's doing it.
From an optic standpoint, I look at Trump as being the weakest because he was the one that was seen around the world as the guy who was, basically letting Putin nestle his nuts on his nose. And that was the public perception in Russia, in the United States, in Europe, and Biden made it very clear, like, nah, I'm not that guy. I'm sorry, I'm not that guy. So I guess it depends. I think that all of these presidents played a role in the audacity of what we are calling the Kremlin, but I'll talk about this a little bit later. I don't even believe this is a Kremlin thing. I think this is a Putin thing. But anyway, let's get into this article. Biden, weak Biden details new Russian sanctions. Says aggression cannot go unanswered. President Biden, I really, really want to get. Thank you. President Joe Biden forcefully condemned Russian President Vladimir Putin. Is he really the president? I mean, they don't even hold elections.
No, that's just more of a formality.
Yeah. Invasion of Ukraine on Thursday, calling it a premeditated attack. Duh. And a brutal assault, quote, without provocation, without justification, without necessity, end quote. So I think that everybody around the world, I think that, again, U.S. intelligence did a really good job of snitching on Russia every step of the way. Like, no, you will not false flag this. If you're going to go into Ukraine, you're going to go in there not as, some aggrieved party, but you're going to go in as the heel.
Yeah. Well, yeah, to an extent. Yeah, I think it's worked out optically. It's definitely worked out where people aren't essentially looking at Russia as some big, oh my God, they're saving people. Because what did Russia? They made a statement saying that they were trying to counteract a genocide. I'm like, all right. Mm-hmm. So,
yep. And I think that it's important because if this does go into world war, I do believe that they're going to wipe the human presence off of that part that we call Russia. It's going to end up being very close to what happened to Germany, I believe, because from the very beginning, when Hitler was doing his thing, there was no way for Germany to hide the fact that they were not an aggrieved party at all, that they were aggressors.
Yeah.
With their with their Aryan supremacy, whatever. There was no way that they were going to be able to sell what they were going to try to do as something that was noble. There was no nobility in it at all. It was just narcissism run amok. So I think that it was really important for a country that leads the world in false flag attacks, the United States, to call out Russia on their would-be false flag attack and say, nope, don't even buy it. They're killing their own people. Don't even. If you're going to invade Ukraine, if you're going to do what you're going to do, stop with the pretenses.
Well, it's going to be, like I said, it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out in the world stage, especially with something where, you actually did have Russia going into Ukraine, because like there was rumors like, oh, we're going to do it. And then people thought like, no, I don't know if they'd really try. Well, they tried. So what we got saying right here?
So Biden is saying that he will make sure that Putin will be a pariah on the international stage. I think that that's false, because Putin has been a pariah on the international stage for years, which is part of what I believe is the motivation for all of this in the first place. And we're going to get into that a little bit later. So let's get to the point where they talk about the actual sanctions. This is interesting because Belarus thinks of themselves as Russia light.
Yeah.
New sanctions imposed by Biden also target Belarus for its role in Russia's invasion of Ukraine. For those that don't know, Russia was allowed to move their military through Ukraine. The Ukrainian president was like, "Yeah, let's get both of our countries bombed into oblivion." Penalties include sanctions on 24 Belarusian. That kind of rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? Individuals and entities, according to the Treasury Department. The U.S. is sanctioning 2 Belarusian-owned banks, along with several actions targeting Belarus's defense and security industries. What I'm looking for is because there's supposed to be a list of sanctions here. In his first remarks after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, President Joe Biden condemned what he called an attack made without provocation, without justification, without necessity. This premeditated attack, Vladimir Putin has been planning for months, as we've been saying all along, rejecting all good faith efforts. For weeks, we were saying that this would happen. So, there was a lot of talk, too, about how U.S. intelligence would be compromised if they kept talking about how, this invasion was going to happen, and then every day the invasion didn't happen. Biden said Russia's attack on Ukraine is unfolding as officials predicted, and that Russia rejected every good faith effort the United States and our allies. Biden said members of the European Union, including France, Germany, Italy, as well as the UK, who is not part of the EU anymore, Canada, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and others have joined a global coalition to amplify a united response. And this is one of the things that I thought that was very interesting, because I do believe, of course, you have Belarus is supporting Russia. And I do think that China is going to also join Russia in not too long a time. From a tactical standpoint, this is not a good thing for Russia. Japan is very close to Russia. Australia is out there in the deep Pacific, along with New Zealand. Canada is right there on the other side of Russia, because a lot of people have have assumed that Russia would, be able to have an easy time attacking Alaska. But I don't believe that the U.S. military nor the Canadian military is going to just let that happen. Russia, I believe, is in a bad tactical position as far as how little people live in their country compared to how large their landmass is, how hostile their landmass is, and where all of these countries line up as far as all of these Russian borders.
The only thing that keeps Russia a superpower in a lot of ways is their nuclear arsenal. Let's not get that twisted.
And a lot of their nuclear arsenal is not even useful. A lot of them have had to been buried because they're out of commission.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about technological advancements, is Russia technologically advanced enough to be able to launch what they have and actually get them to their targets? Because make no mistake, Russia's not doing this without the full knowledge that if they do this, the high likelihood is that they won't exist anymore either. And I think that the Russian people care. I don't think that Putin cares. Putin is ready to basically exterminate the human race in the name of his ego. And that's my, and we're going to get a little bit deeper into that later. All right. So the G7 leaders agreed to limit Russia's ability to do business in dollars, euros, pounds, and yen. And for those that don't know, in a lot of international markets, the ruble, which is Russia's currency of choice, their official currency, that shit hit record lows.
Yeah.
Like you're not if you're Russia, there is nothing that comes out of this conflict that's good for you.
No, the problem is that I don't think people understand the amount of economic issues Russia has anyways. Like I said, the only reason you even consider them a superpower is because of their nuclear firepower. That's it. Economically, even with all their ability to export, they just don't make enough money. And like I said, a long-lasting war with like a world war for Russia, it would probably be very similar to World War II, where it was getting very sparse at the end, where you had people essentially fighting with pitchforks and fucking brooms and shit, just being sent out to the front lines. Like, Russia doesn't have the military capacity or the funding to have a long-length war. So I don't know what Russia's play is here, right? Because when you go into another country like Ukraine and you're saying, oh, we're not going to be taking over Ukraine, we're just going to be stopping the genocide and then we'll leave. No worries. We're not going to take over. Anyone that actually believes anything from that Russian statement is a fucking idiot. Like I said,
yeah, but there's been too much snitching on them for them to sell that with any degree of efficacy.
I get what you're saying, but some of the Russia statements, it's comical in a way, because they're trying to say we're just going to Ukraine. A lot of this stems from is early agreements, like I said, with NATO, European allies, hey, this is the line we'll draw, and then they kind of went against that agreement. This has been going on since forever. We've been fighting proxy wars with Russia. I don't think people realize we've been at
Iran, Syria.
We've been at war with Russia. It hasn't stopped since the Cold War. What we just did is oh, you know what? Instead of us fighting, I'm going to fund this group. I don't know, the Taliban, Al Qaeda. That's actually
no, but they actually had Russian troops. Remember that there was a firefight where the Russian forces were decimated.
Right, but what I'm saying is for the U.S. and Russia, I'm saying getting into their conflict, U.S. hasn't always had troops on the ground, but they've always funded groups, right? Okay, I'm going to support this opposite side.
Well, what I'm referring to is actual. I'm talking about the actual conflicts on the ground. What was it, 3 or 4 years ago, where they were actual conflicts on the ground with, because remember, the Kremlin said, oh, these guys have nothing to do with us, but they were Russian forces. Yeah. And they were actually exchanging small arms fire with American soldiers, and they got wiped.
Yeah.
They got wiped.
I know exactly what you're referencing. I think but what I'm more to my point is that Russia and U.S. has always been at war. It's not stopped since the Cold War. We just fight it in a different way now. So we'll just generally, right? Usually we'll have proxy wars in other countries because we want to have an influence. They want to have an influence. And that's why I hate to say it. There's always been like, oh, we're the world police. I'm like, well, unfortunately, we have to be in some states because if we don't, you have other countries just going in there and they're just going to put their puppet leaders, even though you can argue we do the same thing.
I was going to say that. I was like, what's the fucking difference?
But like, listen, I want to be on the winning team. That's the difference. I want to win. I don't want to lose. So, like, you know what? I'm fine with it to a certain degree. Like, you know what? As long as we ain't getting fucking nuclear holocaust and we want to make sure we're safe, I'm cool with it. That's my thing is it's like, let's have some fucking pride for God's sake.
But that's what I'm saying. When you have a country that by the raw numbers has the most nuclear weapons and nobody respects you, it's like the bully on the yard, right?
Yeah.
You know, you're going to start some shit knowing that you're going to get in trouble with the principal. You're going to, your mother's going to whoop your ass when you get home.
No.
But you're going to do this anyway because all the other kids are laughing at you because you're fat and you've got, fake Converse sneakers.
Damn, that seems like a personal childhood issue from someone you knew.
But I think it might be Putin. Okay.
Like the thing is always like with Putin is that, and this, I was actually pretty hard with Trump when it came to this with his relations with Russia and like speaking even glowingly about him. It's like, this has been Putin's playbook. If you actually look into his history and just how he served that country, like if anyone didn't think that he wanted to have full unification of the former USSR, you don't know your history. You do not know the backdrop of that. So my thing here is that like, hey, you know what? We need to be firm with Russia. We need to, make sure that we take certain actions. And it will be interesting to see is like, are we going to like, if this continues, let's say they take over Ukraine and like, you know what? I kind of want that next country. Like, are we going to put troops on the ground? Like, are we actually going to start a world war? Because like, I don't know. I think a madman like Putin, who has no regard for human life, fighting a war that he knows he won't win. I think in the back of Putin's mind, he's banking on that the U.S. won't fucking check his bluff or check his shit. And I also think he's hoping that China's going to back him in this war because this is the one thing that has happened over the past decade. Before, China and Russia used to hate each other. They both communist countries. You think they'd get along, but they detested one another. But they've kind of worked on the relationship and they've become more warm with one another, right?
Because they're not real communist countries. If they were a real communist country, all of the resources in the country would be spread across all of the citizens. Well, but if you look at the way China runs their country, they have some stupid rich people, and then the vast majority of them are poor as fuck.
Oh, so like I said, it's a real communist country. The problem is that
because like even the United States, we live in a fake capitalistic society too. This ain't real capitalism.
Well, like, let's be honest, though. Like, I'm not going to go. We can have this debate later, but like, when it comes down to anything, when you give someone so much power, right, that they can dictate where certain funds go, and you let the government take control,
like Google and Facebook, and Amazon,
you're seeing it because we're no longer fighting monopolies. But at the same time, right, you got this foreign country, and you give someone that amount of power. You give your government control, and this has been on my stance the whole time. When you give your government control and tells you what to do and dictate your own life, have fun being like, oh, you know what? Like, you're going to wipe your ass only on Tuesdays. It's going to get to that point. But,
I'll be able to smell Captain Paul over here in New York when that happens.
Well, New York's pretty smelly too, so it's going to be pretty strong.
Nah, but, your stench will permeate.
But when it comes down to it, Russia and China, they're communist countries. They don't, they're the top percent.
It's fake communism.
No, it's real communism.
It's fake.
That is how communism has worked in all these countries. I get
because our fake capitalism works the same way, where all of the resources flow to the top, and the vast majority of people have nothing.
We have more luxury in this country, the everyday citizen, compared to everyday citizens in Russia. and in China. There's no comparison there.
But whatever is there flowing upward, the principle is still the same. The top people have everything, and the rest of everybody have next to nothing. By comparison, the principle is still the same. Socialist country, communist country, capitalist country. The end result is you have a tiny group of people with all the power and all the resources, and then a large group of people that look up to the small group of people. Same shit.
And I don't want to make this into a debate with this because we definitely disagree with this, but it's just, I'll say this. Unless China backs them.
But China has already signed some agreements with them in the last several months, unrelated to this.
But if China...
But that lays the groundwork for China to then...
Yeah, but if China joins in, that will make this conflict a lot more interesting, because the one thing is that I think militarily, the United States, just from an advancement standpoint and from power itself, is the best in the world. That being said, China can just throw bodies at you. Right, like they put their people in sweatshops and they have concentration camps no one cares about talking about. So
but the thing is, they're never going to be physically strong enough to put up a fight against. I mean, you're gonna be in a situation where you're gonna have U.S. Marines on the ground, and each Marine is going to be taking out 50 of their people. Each Marine taking out 50 of their people.
I'm not saying that they'd win, but what I'm saying is that the loss of life that it's going to cause is going to be astronomical.
Astronomical.
You have to understand that the amount of people they have in that country.
And the thing that angers me about this so much, and we're going to be talking about this a little bit later to get the opinions of regular Russians on the ground. It's going to be Russia that is going to be pulling a bunch of people into this, of their own people, and I just get this sneaky suspicion that no matter what they say, 99% of them are like, we don't care about none of this shit. We don't want anything to do with this. I think that if Chinese people were allowed to be honest in public, they would say, you know what, we don't want to get involved in any of this shit either.
No, yeah, but the everyday person never wants to get involved in war. War is fought by the top. That's how that works.
Yeah. No, the war is fought by the bottom for the top.
Well, that's what I meant. That's what I meant to say. Is that like the bottom fights the war, but the top is the one that essentially like, like chess pieces, like they're playing chess.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of pawns, and that's what I'm saying. It doesn't. I think that all of these so-called economic systems, they all are meant to get people to try to prop one up over the other when they're all the same economic system with the same outcomes.
I would say this. I think in a capitalist society, you're more prone to be highly more successful than in a communist society. Because in a communist society, there's a lot more hoops to jump through. I get what you're saying. You know, essentially you're playing for the same master in the regards that the top percent will kind of dictate how the lower does.
Yeah, the top 1% lords over the bottom 99%. And that's in every country.
But in a capitalist society, you essentially can go from nothing into becoming.
And the chances of that are so astronomically low that it's not even worth considering. Because the thing is, everybody keeps talking about all the opportunity. Then why is the middle class being bled dry? Why is it that for every new billionaire that you see, you've got millions and millions of people that died with nothing? Costs are going up. Wages are still stagnant. And that's been going on for the last 45, 50 years in this country. And I think that what it is, it's an illusion. It's an illusion of choice to make you feel better about what you don't have.
I mean,
oh yeah, you could win the lottery. But how many people win the lottery?
I have, and this is just coming. We have different upbringing, so I just disagree on.
But the thing is, to me, it's not the upbringing. I'm looking at the actual results.
So
you have a very tiny bit. Did you know that less than 10% of the U.S. population owns 87% of all stocks that are being traded in the stock market?
Yeah.
It's the same cronyism. It's the same shit, just called something else to make people feel proud about playing for a different team.
But see, this is where I kind of like, for me, you make a very sweeping statements, right? So like in communist regimes where you kind of are dictated how things are going to go, or like, let's say you get training as a doctor, but if they want to work you as something else, you'll get the same exact pay, right? Because that's the socialist system. They're not going to pay you more to do a different job. Whereas like if I'm in America, right, I can find different jobs that give me higher avenues of pay. I get the same point. What you're saying is that the top percent dictate how the shit goes, because that's just how life works, unfortunately.
You know, I would have agreed with you. I would have agreed with you in the past. I'm just going to say two words: Jack Ma.
Jack Ma.
He's the leader of Alibaba.
Oh, okay.
Now, I would have been on board with you. I would have been. But when you see the people that's of the Jack Ma, they're in that stratosphere. I mean, we're talking about stupid fucking wealth in what is supposed to be a communist society, right? But while China might say, well, we've got these regulations, their regulations are built on ego. Oh, well, Jack Ma criticized members of the government, so now we're going to regulate his company. But if he never said anything about the government, he'd be their version of Jeff Bezos, because that's exactly what he is.
But the thing is, so the only reason that you have more profitability in China is because they included capitalist ideals into their economic system. Because before, history just shows it, China, for as much people as they had, even some exporting goods, they were never that wealthy of a country, right? Even going back years and years, like even 100 years, they always had conflicts because there was always some, like, this group wants to take power, this group wants to take power, I want to have this ideal, right? And that they just never were able to have a unification, right? And even when they did, they struggled financially until they like, okay, we need to open up our economic plans here and not just deal with this within the lens of socialism. We're going to have to play on the open market and become successful. That's why China like has become the economic powerhouse it has. That's why we fucking owe China money, because they're like, you know,
lots of money.
That's why we.
I think they might end up removing that debt when the missiles start flying, because from what I understand, they have only 300. They only have 300 nuclear missiles in their arsenal. 300 to 350. They don't have that many, and their navy is very weak because they're a landlocked nation.
Well, they've been actually for years. China's been working at trying to.
Yeah, they've been creating fake islands.
Yeah,
in the Indian Ocean.
That's just sick.
And the thing is, this is the only difference that I can see. But then again, if you look at how U.S. regulators have been attacking the Tesla guy, fuck is his name? Elon Musk, right? When Elon Musk started, criticizing various governmental systems, then you started seeing more SEC inquiries into them to shut them up. What's the difference between that and what China did to Ma? And that's what I'm saying.
Because in China, you can disappear. Like there's an aspect of have you seen what happened with that woman tennis player? Just she's like, oh, no, I'm all set. Always around CCP officials, never really by herself. She disappeared for a long year. Listen, I get it. People might not be exactly happy with the United States of America. And you know what? I'm not saying we're perfect. I'm
just saying that there are a lot of parallels that we don't pay attention to on a daily basis.
But if you're going to compare us to them, it's there's not a complete comparison.
It's not complete, but the fact that we're able to have this conversation means something. The fact that we can actually debate this and both of us actually have points that are valid means that it's too close to comfort. And for me, again, I don't just look at what people say. I look at the results. If you look at China, 1% of their people are throwing around money because the Chinese market for luxury goods is one of the most insane in the world. If you look at their top 1% is doing the same thing as our top 1%. And their bottom 99% is living the same way as our bottom 99%. And so for me, when I look at it, is okay, you're calling it different, but the results are the same. So I don't believe in either one of your systems, especially since we have socialism for the rich in this country. Oh, the stock market went down a little bit. Nobody complained about the government giving Wall Street 1.5 trillion. But when they went to give 1.3 trillion to actual regular people, everybody was whining and crying. So it's socialism for the rich and go fuck yourself for everybody else.
Yeah, okay.
Which is the same thing as China.
No, but my thing is this, and this is why I believe in small government, is like I don't believe in bailing out corporations. I don't believe in giving fucking bailouts.
Well, we agree there. Because the fact is, not only did they do it, they got very little pushback from the public when they did it. Very little pushback.
Well, I don't know. Maybe the circles. I complained about that quite a bit because I just thought that was ridiculous. We shouldn't be fucking buying out and spending taxpayer dollars on people.
Speaking of taxpayer dollars, and I want to put this out there. I saw a story from Steve Lato. Check out Steve Lato's channel. Great channel. Okay. He was talking about a transgender human being that was falsely arrested and was just spent 5 months in jail in Georgia. Right. Clearly a false arrest. Okay. This person was just awarded by a jury $1.5 million for the 5 months that they spent locked up under false pretenses. The arrest was false. The pretenses were false. It was all false. Okay. The funny thing is that the officers that conducted the false arrest will pay zero of that 1.5 million. Guess who's paying that 1.5 million?
Who?
The taxpayers.
Taxpayer dollars, yeah. Right?
So we have these protected groups in our society, government representatives and corporate interests. Whenever shit goes bad, the fucking taxpayers pay for it. But when we start talking about making sure that everybody's got health care, oh my God, that's horrible. Jimmy Dean says that's not true. Most of China is still in complete and abject poverty. They have rising middle class now, but many live on $1 a day. That's exactly what the fuck I said. That's what I said. And I guess Jimmy Dean also agrees with us as well. Getting back to the article, Biden said the United States is taking steps to defend NATO allies. The organization will convene a summit on Friday, which is tomorrow, which will bring together the leaders of 30 allied nations and close partners to affirm our solidarity and map out the next steps we will take to further strengthen all aspects of our NATO alliance. Now, and this is what we were talking about before, right? Mm-hmm. Some reason my come on, computer, don't fuck with me.
Did she shit the bed?
Yeah, the page kind of froze a little bit. Biden said that he's spoken to Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. I was about to call him Austin Lloyd, and Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman General Mark Milley about preparation for additional moves of troops if it becomes necessary to protect NATO allies. What the fuck does that sound to you?
That sounds like we're about to get into the mix.
Yeah, that's what it. Now, of course, we were talking about some of the consequences of this, and we were talking about energy earlier. And again, I will not pretend to know more about the energy system than you. There are things that I do know, right, but I'm not going to pretend to know more than you. Biden said his administration is going to use every tool. That means every douchebag to protect Americans and business from rising gas prices. He called on American oil and gas companies to, quote, not exploit this moment to hike their prices to raise profits.
A lot of this comes. I don't think people understand because this is supply and demand. So, for example, during COVID,
out of the good of your heart, when oil future contracts went into the negative in 2020, right, and those oil companies lost all those profits, do you really think they give a fuck about what you have to say?
I think the problem here is that during the vid, gas prices were at an all-time low. If you remember, they were going down extremely low because nobody was driving, nobody was going out, nobody was spending that much fuel, gasoline, oil. If you're telling these companies that took a record loss, and I know this because I in the industry, so I know, like, you know, I got laid off and we had a record layoff because there wasn't much product moving. To ask them to not to put down their prices in the faith of good is just ridiculous. That's not going to happen. What Biden should be doing, right, to keep the prices actually manageable is like opening up pipelines, doing certain things to make sure that we can secure our own energy. And exactly, yep, the pipeline, which actually people don't want to talk about, adversely affected Canada, that pipeline as well. Because, that pipeline was through Canada into the United States. But, hey, like, it's going to be very interesting. Like, if he's going to actually walk the walk and kind of work with these oil companies and kind of lessen some of the regulations, it would be great. But at the same token, I think he's going to stick with his guns. And, as wrong as I may think that is, I just think Biden's just hoping that the gas, like, oh, please don't raise them. I'm like, of course they're going to raise them. Because you have a certain amount of supply, certain amount of reserves, and you need to see a profit on that return. It's just kind of basic economics 101. When a product is in high demand, what do? Evil? You raise the prices. That's pretty much how it works. Like if there's I would say a low supply pool, and it's not even really low. We can get into that argument where we have ULCCs and VLCCs off the coast on the Atlantic and the Pacific coast with billions of barrels, of oil and gas. That being said, you're going to raise the prices, and that's because you want to see a return on investment, especially when you saw like Mobil, BP, like they saw such massive losses. They're going to want to recoup on that. So to expect these oil companies to play ball with you when you didn't play ball with them, they're going to essentially just tell you to go fuck yourself.
Right. I'm going to come from the other side because I think that there's a tactical issue here. I'm going to disagree with two things you said, and they're actually related. When you say that you think that Biden's going to stick to his guns on energy, I don't think he's going to do that. And I don't think that the oil companies are going to say to Biden to go fuck himself either for the same reason. Okay.
I like that.
I think that while we do have some sociopaths out there, a lot of them are smarter than Putin. Putin is ready to cause an extinction level event. He's ready to do that today. I think that he's bored with being rich. I think he's bored of being able to have sex with any woman in his country that he wants. I think that, I just think that he's bored and he's like, well, I'll throw the whole world away. And then hopefully my name will live on either famously or in infamy. I don't care. But for the other entities, where you're talking about the BPs and the Exxons and all of these guys, right? I think that these guys are really, really content living very lavish, comfortable lifestyles. I think that they like being in the top 0.001% of American society. And I do believe that I do believe that they're going to think forward enough to say, you know what, if we're going to keep this ball rolling, we're probably going to have to put some of this shit on hiatus. Biden is probably going to have to put a lot of that green energy stuff, because once you have to start producing for war more than you already are, he can say, and the thing is, he can actually sell this to the American people. And this is one of the things I get really pissed off about with all of this identity politics garbage on both sides. When you have a Russia or a China rising up to cause major problems for the world, all of a sudden, we don't care about pronouns. There are no more pronouns. There are no more, Hunter Biden questions. There's no more Hillary's emails. There's no more of that shit. The only thing that you have is, are we going to fucking survive? That's all you got now. So I think that while it would be great for everything to go green, except for my car, don't make my cars go green. Make your car go green. Okay. I'm a hypocrite. I'm an American, right? So I've got to be a hypocrite. Don't overly tax my stuff, just your stuff. I do think that he's going to have the perfect excuse where people are just going to stop listening to the extreme left. They're going to stop listening to them and say, listen, Putin doesn't care about your pronouns or none of that shit you talking. We're going to have to kind of put some of this Green New Deal stuff. We're going to have to put that to the back burner right now so that we can try to somewhat stabilize the country in a time where we may not see war on our shores, but you're going to be missing a lot of members of your community if we don't put a stop to this. Right now, we need to stop what looks to be a burgeoning energy crisis that could destabilize the country. So if you want to still talk about your 84 pronouns, we need you to shut the fuck up for 6 months.
Okay, so like this, and I absolutely fucking agree with that. It's actually some of the absurd shit I've seen. Social media fucking platforms has made me want to blow my brains out. There's actually one I want to talk about at the end of our podcast a little bit more lightheartedly. This is the thing. I hope you're right. I just, with Biden can be because I don't know if he's necessarily the most mentally fit person to run this position, but I don't know. I'm hoping he has enough forethought. Like, okay, we're about to go to war. We need to open up all avenues of resources, and we need to get this shit going. And if he's smart, and this keyword, if he is smart, he reaches out to those oil companies, to those distribution companies, starts getting these pipelines ready now, because it's not like you just pull a plug or just turn an off switch. Those pipelines take a certain amount of time to get back online. It's not just the turning and the switch.
Yeah.
It's going to take a few months.
Yeah.
So if he's smart, he needs to get that immediately done underway, right? And get that started. Because if not, it's going to be like such a lapse, right, in supply over a long period of time.
Yeah, but I still think that there are too many mechanisms. There's too much red tape to just, like you say, flip the switch. I don't think that he's going to make a move right now. I think that they're still going to try this diplomacy shit. They're going to fail. But diplomacy is going to fail.
He needs to start.
It has already failed.
He needs to start the whole process of trying to get these pipelines, try to get these outfits up.
Ain't gonna happen. But Jimmy Dean asked a really good question. Again, you know a little bit more about the energy sector than I do. How do you think that this affects OPEC? Because Russia is not officially in OPEC, but they have this OPEC plus, and that plus is Russia. So
it's gonna be interesting to see how this does affect us. The OPEC. I don't know, because like this is a discussion people they don't even realize is going on. Like, for example, like the North Pole, like they're creating waterways and they're actually drilling up north. Right.
Oh, so they wiped off Santa Claus's home, eminent domain.
A couple SEAL teams came down and said, "Get the fuck out!" Just shot him. Like, I don't know. No, all seriousness though.
No, they shot him and killed him, but claimed that because he was overweight, COVID killed him.
And he had erectile dysfunction.
And they're gonna stop lying to their kids. Yeah, we bought all your presents. COVID-19 killed Santa.
But like, people don't understand is like currently in the North Pole is they actually were working on waterways and like international lines of like, okay, you can drill here, you can drill here and stuff like that because there's a lot of oil up there. There's a lot if you drill. They actually had ice cutters, like big, like nuclear powered ice cutters, like creating waterways up there.
Uh-huh.
And, I'll just say this is that because they're not in OPEC, but they're kind of affiliated in a way, it's going to be it's going to be interesting. I don't know what's going to happen with that. I'll be honest with you. It's just, there's so many different variables in this. I don't know if Russia even has, because Russia can export a lot of oil, but even a lot of their ships, I don't know if you know this, a lot of their ships are becoming outdated. A lot of their ships are like, they're way past their actual useful date because with a ship, it's about 30 to 50 years, right? That you want to use it. And then you actually want to move on from it because of the corrosiveness of some of the products you carry wears down the hull.
Also, the outdated technology too.
Exactly.
There's only but so much retrofitting you can do with some of these older ships to make them sea ready in a modern war theater.
Yeah. So it's there is international law that you cannot sink merchant vessels, but we know Germany violated that in World War II because when a war, like people are like, oh, well, that's a law. You can't break that. But like when war comes out, it's like, yeah, fuck those guys and just they'll, see how it goes. I'm not saying the U.S.
Yeah, I don't think that laws mean anything when Russia clearly broke international law and does not give a fuck. So them laws are out the fucking window.
Yeah, it does not give a fuck. So I think it's going to impact OPEC in some way. It's just there's so many different variables in this situation. I don't know exactly how and how negatively. And actually, an interesting thing that Jimmy Dean just said, and I'm just actually going to take your job for a second, is apparently Ukraine is handing out guns to citizens. Hey, I think that's sad. That's really sad what's going on there. And what I saw, I don't know if you.
I thought you'd be excited. I thought you would want to go move to Ukraine, man. They handing out guns. They're not trying to take their guns.
But listen, this is what happens. When
that was a bad joke, y'all.
It was a bad joke, but listen, I think definitely.
I thought people would move from Texas. Like Ukraine is handing out guns. I'm leaving Texas. I'm going to Ukraine.
But the problem with this whole scenario is that with this is why I believe in having the right to bear arms is that situations like this, every citizen should have a weapon on them because if shit ever came to this country, people invaded, you're gonna have to fight for your life.
But the thing is, ain't nobody invading the United States for very, very clear reasons. For two very, very clear major reasons. Okay, one of them is called the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah,
and the second reason is the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah. But
you're not, and the thing is, the United States has permeated so many countries around the world that before you can bring anything to the U.S. mainland, they've already killed half your military on your soil because they're already there.
But no, I think for the citizens, it's very sad, and I don't think people. I also don't think people understand that. Can we be real? Like how terrible war is, because there was some video.
People's lives have been way too easy for way too long.
There was a video of Ukraine of a jet going by, shooting some missiles by a house, and the baby's a child screaming, crying, stuff like that. And some of the shit I would see, oh my god, a baby's crying, we gotta stop this. I'm like, bro, do you think that I guess just the stupidity I see in some of these replies. I'm like, oh my god, a baby's crying, we gotta stop this. Oh my god, I'm like, dude, this happens every day in the world right now. There's a war somewhere where you're having children exposed to these certain conditions. I'm not condoning it. I'm just saying, I'm like, damn, this is what it comes down to me with how I call them the loony left. Is they're so fixated on shit that truly
doesn't matter.
Does it not matter? And then it's when real shit happens, it's that's why, in my opinion, if there was ever a civil war, and I'm hoping that never happens, the right would win, hands down, because it's just I don't know, some of the left, what they say, I'm I don't know if you would know how to handle how real shit goes down. Not every single person on the left, but a lot of them,
I know exactly what you're talking about.
You're kind of crazy.
And the thing is, I identify with leftist politics a fair amount. But some of it is like, are you fucking serious? You can't be serious. And the thing is, you can only hold a viewpoint like that when you're living in a time where you're talking about the largest. Oh yeah, yo, and we're gonna talk about this later. We're gonna talk about this later. I agree with a lot of leftist talking points and stuff like that because it just makes sense.
Yeah.
But some of it is so ridiculous, and it's like you can only say these things because people who believe in right-wing ideologies basically softened your world for you.
Yeah.
And while I disagree with the right about a lot of stuff, there is some stuff that makes sense, and which is why I don't believe in playing for any team. I don't believe in playing for any political team.
Well, there's something I was actually going to ask you. Is I shared like a tweet, like a screenshot of a certain tweet. I don't know if you could kind of put it up, but I kind of like not completely change the tone, but have a little bit more lighthearted for a second. Is there was this tweet I saw and I responded to on our Twitter account because I thought it was absolutely like ridiculous. Okay, so this person, his name is Ian McLaren, says, "Sure, ask Russian NHL players about Putin, right? But also ask American NHL players about Texas. And trans rights are human rights. For those saying whataboutism, fair to ask about this if you're asking about this."
Yeah, I'm totally lost,
bro. Like, okay,
yeah, because I read the replies, but I think it looks like he's like just responding to stupid people saying stupid shit. What I want to know is what was the context of the original tweet?
This was the original tweet.
Like, you know what I'm saying? No, I don't care about all of the responses because it's clear that he's responding to trolls.
Yeah,
I'm talking about the original tweet here at the top.
Oh yeah,
what's the context there?
I don't understand. Like, because essentially it's just one of those things. I get where trans people are kind of like there's certain laws they've passed in Texas where that people view as anti-trans and stuff like that. But I feel like
because that's not even a one-to-one comparison.
No, it's not.
Russian NHL players talking about the leader of the country, and you're talking about one state out of 50.
Yep. Well, because it makes absolutely no fucking sense. Because it's like, this is the thing. It's like this guy, he looks soft anyway, so I'm not surprised. But I think with like when you have, I looked at his bio and he had pronouns in it. I'm like, okay, this meets the description. This absolutely meets the description of someone with pronouns in their bio. We have Russia, right, going into Ukraine, invading them essentially, and this guy's like, but trans people too in Texas. Like, I'm not trying to diminish, the rights of other human beings, but the level of mental gymnastics it takes to tweet.
I think it's also really poor timing. This is in very poor form. This is in very, very poor form. You want to like Ian, your whole trans rights thing. We're talking about a situation that might lead to your very person merging with the universe along with the rest of us. Yeah. Oh, and those trans rights you're talking about, that will also merge with the universe when atomic bombs start flying and exploding.
Yep.
Fuck off.
Dude, it's just
fuck all the way off, man. Fuck off.
Up, bro, and I let the retweet. I'm like, bruh, you can't be serious. Shake my fucking head. I don't understand. Like, and this is when it comes to the left, like these idiots. I'm sorry. This guy is a fucking full-blown moron. Because if you're tweeting that when Russia is invading Ukraine, about to start another world war, but my pronouns now. Like,
what do you think is gonna happen? Let's say the United States didn't have two oceans to protect them. Let's just say. Okay. Let's say Russia, made landfall. Do you think they're going to give a fuck about your pronouns?
They just, before before they wrap you out, all right, we'll have male, females. Excuse me, I'm a man.
They're going to pop your top and laugh at you.
Yo, it's so dumb.
They may even fuck the hole that they made in your head with their gun.
And I'm not trying to make light of transgender people and all that shit, but read the fucking room, for God's sakes. You know what?
I meant to say nuclear weapons. I said atomic.
You know what? Nuclear weaponry doesn't discriminate if you're woman, man, or trans. It does not.
Nah, it won't. It won't.
You'll wipe away in the radiation the same fucking way. So, Ian, you get the fucking moron of the week. Bro, that's inclusive. That's absolutely inclusive. I like that.
Yeah, they're gonna include all of us in the camps.
Bro, it's absolute ridiculousness and a moron like that though. You will
not be. If they start at the concentration camps, okay, you will not be discriminated against. You will be able to go into the gas chambers alongside, the people that identify the same way you do.
That's fucking equality, boys.
I
just, like I said, I saw some fucking pretty dumbass tweets, and that had to be up there with idiot of the day.
Yeah, I just can't. I can't do it, man. I can't. I just no. Just no. I want to get into. I want to get into. This little news thing, because I've been really curious about what the Russian people think about all of this. Let's see what the Russian people think.
So now, in a closer look at how Russia's attacks are being received there today, senior international correspondent Keir Simmons joins us from there. Hey, Keir, good morning.
Hoda, good morning. President Putin made his televised announcement
President Putin
here in Moscow, but Russians woke up to find it playing on loop on Russian morning television and to find the value of their currency crashing. Hoda, there have been lines at banks of Russians trying to withdraw dollars from banks and people coming up to us on the street to tell us how upset they are. One man told us he supports President Putin. Many, many others told us they do not, including one woman who says her partner is Ukrainian and how frightened she is for him.
I don't like it, and I don't want it to be like that.
She doesn't exist anymore, by the way. They killed her.
Yep, I'm actually in love with one. So I don't know what to say. It's a tragedy.
I'm afraid that something will happen here, and I'm afraid of people who live in Ukraine.
You're afraid for them?
Yes.
And President Putin has cancelled his public appearances. Today we're told that he is meeting with oligarchs as Russia faces those huge sanctions.
He's meeting with oligarchs.
President Putin, we are told, is making the decisions with a small group around him inside the walls of the Kremlin, Savannah.
All right, Keir, thank you.
Sad, man.
Isn't that pretty much what the fuck I said?
Yep.
And it's so I mean, he's going to sit down and meet with the richest people in the country.
Yep.
Because a lot of those people, they just saw their wealth hit the fucking ground. If they didn't already have US dollars or, French francs or, the European euro, the euro, if they didn't already have that in their physical possession, they're fucked because a lot of their accounts outside the country have been frozen.
Yeah.
So nobody in Russia wants this, but guess what? How much you want to bet that the vast majority of troops that have just landed in Ukraine from Belarus and from Russia, they are unhappy with what they're doing.
Probably a lot of them. Like we said, these soldiers and these people, everyday people, don't want to be going in there and fighting a war. You know what I mean? Like, defending their country is one thing, but you're initiating essentially a war by doing this. You're invading another country. And nobody wants that, because I think even the Russian people understand, like, they're like, well, fuck, like, if shit pops off, we're kind of fucked.
We don't just have an intra-country economy. We are part of the world economy.
Yep.
If you look at North Korea from space at night,
It's dark.
most of Russia is like that too.
Yep.
Do you want the rest of the country like that too? Because that's what's going to end up happening.
Yep.
Either we're going to all be plunged into darkness, or Russia will.
Yep. I mean, listen, like, you saw with the Terry Panarin, right? When he
forward
for the New York Rangers.
When
he said anything
the fake sexual assault, the fake grape.
When he
the SA. Yeah.
When he had negative kind of comments regarding Putin, some allegations pop up, and his family gotten threatened. And listen, like, this is a very real thing, and I think people have to understand that Putin, he's going to do what he wants to do. It's going to be interesting.
Over here, we love the bread man. Over here, we love the bread man. Shout out to Artemi Panarin. Let's go Rangers.
I think it's going to be very interesting to see how the things kind of pan out here. And, I hope, I don't know, I hope some semblance of sense hits Putin, but, hey, if he keeps going this route, it's not going to go pretty for Russia. And it's just going to be, I don't know. I'll actually ask you.
There's no win for Russia here.
No,
there's literally no win here.
Do you think China? Yeah, I almost said it like Trump. China. Do you think China joins in? Do you think China joins in the war?
If they don't, Russia's fucked. If they do, they're both fucked.
But like, if you're China and you're looking at it, where you have, relatively, mind you, massive human rights issues that we shouldn't have had.
But they want to be aggressors too.
Yeah.
They want to be aggressive too. And what they did to Hong Kong is pretty much the first salvo, like what Russia did with Crimea in 2014.
Yeah. But I don't know. I don't know. They just don't have the weaponry, I think, to fuck with the global. Like, especially if we had a united front and you had a bunch of like the European, UN, NATO, like if you had these forces all combined together, no one's gonna want that smoke. So it's gonna be interesting from China. Do you try to do that world conquering bullshit, or do you sit back and realize I actually have it pretty good economically right now, and I'm taking advantage of a system that benefits me, and that people just turn a blind eye to the concentration camps I have in my country?
Well, Jimmy Dean says it could be a calculated risk about controlling the pipeline and energy. It might pay out in the long term for Russia. There's two reasons why this is wrong. Number one, they were set to make billions upon billions of dollars piping their natural gas into France. France just cut that shit. So they ain't controlling shit when it comes to energy, because that pipeline they put the kibosh on it. Secondly, and I already alluded to this earlier in the stream, that I do think that Biden is going to have to make some concessions to the energy sector of our country to make sure that we're not paying $10 a gallon for gas.
Yeah.
So I really do not think that you are going to see Russia gain anything long-term from this unless they stop what they're doing right now, because I think that they don't have the manpower to face just the European nations of NATO. And we're not even talking about the UK. We're not talking about Canada. We're not talking about the United States. We're not talking about Japan, New Zealand, Australia. We haven't even gotten to those places yet. The landmass directly beneath you you're not going to really be able to have a sustained effort against them. And you're going to need China to try to help you to even have that go on. And then, of course, if China declares war, well, you're definitely going to get all of those other countries that I mentioned that is going to step up. And the world loses.
Well, the thing is, the reason
and Jimmy Dean said this during Filthy Casual. The show that you never show up for. Russia has the combined gross domestic product of California. Now, California is pretty big, but they're just one of 50.
This is what I will say here is, and I said, fuck you for that. I'm sorry, I have a life. But anyways,
this is our life.
I know.
TSP, motherfucker.
God, I've been making videos. Suck. But the reason why they want Eastern Ukraine, though, is if you look at like the waterfront, because I've got an image up here to make sure I'm speaking correctly. But like Russia only has a little sliver right on the eastern side with the Black Sea, and if they take over Ukraine, then they completely have the Sea of Azov, right? And then they have way more waterfront here on the Black Sea. So like there was actually a long time conflict because of Ukraine's essentially kind of allyship with the United States and even the UK, is they would allow, like, you couldn't have a certain amount of weaponry on a vessel, but you could allow US ships in the Sea of Azov, right? Mm-hmm. And even in the Black Sea. Russia hated that because it's essentially U.S. ships on their back door. So they've been wanting that waterfront for the longest time. So now if they do take over Ukraine, they essentially landlock the Sea of Azov. They have more waterfront property there on the Black Sea.
Shout out to iDry.
Yeah.
iDry B. It's good to see you.
You have more waterfront property essentially on the Black Sea. And now they can be more of a force when it comes to naval capacity. That being said, Russia's Navy,
but they still don't have the technology or the number of ships.
That's what I was just going to say. Russia's Navy is very outdated. They would need to manufacture brand new ships like immediately, and they don't have the funds to do a ton of that, right? Like we sank a few of their ships. Like let's say we go to World War III.
If you sink two of them, it's a problem.
You would have a very hard time, right? They would have a very hard time manufacturing and creating more. Whereas the U.S., we would just manufacture the shit out of it.
And I was looking for something that was going to show us more of the. I was looking for something. Let me see if I can. I wanted to find out exactly what the sanctions were, but the. It's important to note some of the things that are affected in the sanctions. So I'm going to pull this up right here. I found something. I know a lot of us don't trust CNN, but right now,
goddamn liberals.
There's no left or right when you're talking about fucking world war. Okay. President Joe Biden on Thursday unveiled harsh new sanctions on Russia meant to punish the country for its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, calling out Russian President Vladimir Putin for his aggression, even as he acknowledged it would take time for the new measures to alter Putin's behavior. Quote, Putin is the aggressor. Putin chose this war, and now he and his country, emphasis on his country, most of which disagree with this bullshit, will bear the consequences. Biden said, laying out a set of measures that will impose severe costs on the Russian economy, both immediately and over time. Export blocks on technology, a centerpiece of Biden's approach that he said would severely limit Russia's ability to advance its military and aerospace sector. He also applied sanctions on Russian banks and, quote, corrupt billionaires. We've got plenty of those in our own country, and their families who are close to the Kremlin. The targets were not limited to Russia. The U.S. also went after individuals in the aforementioned Belarus, including the country's defense minister, for that country's role in facilitating the Russian attack. So We were just talking about the fact that Russian technology ain't all that to begin with. And let me tell you, the technology in my brand new car, it was all that until it could not get a chip. So I don't have a touchscreen in my navigation system, right? So if I can't get a touchscreen in my car's navigation system because of a chip shortage, what the fuck do you think Russia's going to be able to do when all fucking silicon is banned exporting from the United States to Russia? Really, what are they going to do with the Navy that they do have, with the war theater being what it is, technologically speaking? What the fuck is Russia going to be able to do?
Yeah. I just think I just have to leave the comic out laughing. But I'll say this, is that I think if that happens and we actually export it, well, not if it happens, when it happens, Russia's kind of fucked, especially when they get limited technology. Like, what are they going to do? Like, put catapults back in fucking way, right? Instead of like throwing rockets out. All right, let me just get this slingshot, boys. I gotcha. Like, it makes absolutely no sense. And I'll say this. I'll touch upon this. Yes, Jimmy Dean, Ukraine is corrupt within itself. It's not a perfect country. That being said, I don't think any country needs to be fucking essentially invaded by Russia to start the precipice of a great world war. So I don't know. I don't know if it will get to a world war. I hope it doesn't. But, if we do the proper sanctions and we kind of make it impossible for them to get imported goods, Russia's fucked. They don't have any they just don't have the money to fight a war.
Well, we may not have world war just yet, but we have world sanctions. Yep. Let's look at this article, because we did a look-see at what the United States has done sanctions-wise. And let's look at what some of these world leaders are talking about. During an emergency summit Thursday to condemn the invasion of Ukraine, the 27 member countries leaders approved punitive measures against Russia's financial, energy, and transport sectors and restrictions on exports and financing. They also added more Russian individuals to its earlier sanctions list. The sanctions must still be legally approved and published before they become effective. The EU leaders, European Union, say they want to draw up sanctions against Belarus because of its close links to Russia. So that's a lot.
Yeah. That's good, though. Like, there should be a lot of sanctions against this country. You shouldn't be going into other countries and starting a war over old USSR territory complaints.
And all of this, Putin talked about, well, I don't want them to join NATO. Like, that's not your fucking call. It's not your country. You're the president of Russia, not the president of Ukraine. And now he wants to be the president of Ukraine as well. So that does complicate a little bit. That complicates things a little bit when you're talking about the military response. As such, the West and its allies showed no inclination to send troops into Ukraine, a non-member of NATO, and risk a wider war on the continent. But NATO reinforced its member states in Eastern Europe as a precaution against an attack on them too. And we already know that, we knew that Crimea wasn't going to be the last thing that happened, right? Now, it did take 8 years for the next thing to happen, but the next thing did eventually happen. So if we have anything to go by when it comes to the precursors to World War I and the precursors to World War II, it's never just we're invading this one country. Once they invade that one country and they get them to wave the white flag, they're going after another country after that.
Absolutely.
Right?
Because why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you keep pushing forward if there's no consequences for your actions? Like, if there was no sanctions, for example, and there was no fight back, that's what, remember, that's how Germany, World War II, when they started taking over territories, some countries just like, oh no, I don't want to fight, and they let Germany steamroll through them because a lot of people just laid down their arms because they were afraid to fight.
Even some of the neutral countries just let the German military move through their country.
You know, like it's in the, you know, historically neutral countries that just let them roll through. So it's just, if there's no resistance at all and Ukraine gets taken, what's that next country over there? You know, I've always wanted more land down in the Southwest. So it's like they would just keep pushing. It's just human nature. If you can conquer something, you're gonna fucking conquer it.
Now this is going to be very, very interesting. Biden, for now, held off imposing some of the most severe sanctions, including cutting Russia out of the SWIFT payment system, which allows for the transfers of money from bank to bank around the globe, or targeting Russia's energy sector. Ukraine's president called for Russia to be cast out of SWIFT, but the U.S. has expressed concerns about the potential damage to European economies. So I think that is a really, really interesting thing there. You know, they don't want to cut them out of the system, but countries are unofficially barred from doing business with them. So I wonder if that is going to really do anything, and if Russia's going to make the next move, because they really, like you stated earlier, that they're calling the bluff of the European Union and the United States.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's going to be one of those things. It's like, whose dick's, my dick's bigger than your dick. My dick's 10 times the size of your dick. Like, it's just going to be one of those things. Like, how much shit can I pull until someone pulls my card? Right? Because Russia don't want that smoke. They shouldn't want that smoke. You know what? I shouldn't say this. I know Russia doesn't want that smoke. Putin might want that smoke, though. Putin's like, you know what? Fuck
That's
you.
the problem.
Putin's like, you know what? You know, I used to be a part of the Kremlin. You know, let's go back to the good old days and just start kicking ass. And just like, you know, you won't kick ass.
Yeah, but you don't have a big enough boot to. You don't have a big enough boot to do that.
It's short man syndrome, bro. Like, it's just one of those people that they want to punch up because they feel like they really need to compensate for something. And for Putin, he's always had that dream of, you know, essentially making the old USSR whole again. And you know, Ukraine joining NATO would have gotten in a massive way of that. That's why he was so opposed to that. And let's not get it twisted. If Ukraine gets taken by Russia and they do completely occupy it and they take it over and absorb it into their own country, do not think it will ever stop. Because like with Crimea, like with Ukraine, another country will come down to like old Russian territory in their eyes and become absorbed into Russia if we do not fight back with sanctions, and if necessary, if we do not fight back with force.
Well, when we're talking about force, it's important for us to show the scale of what is actually happening, because for the vast majority of us, especially for Americans have not fought war on U.S. soil since the Civil War. We've never really been invaded. We have not had, you know, foreign invasion force where you're basically hunkering down behind the neighborhood McDonald's. Okay. It's important for us to see exactly just how crazy the scale is of what's happening on the ground. So to this point, when you're looking at the reports of what is happening in the Ukraine, we're not talking about, you know, people coming in, you know, troops coming in from the Russian border and, you know, kind of entering the cities that are nearest to the border. We're talking about strikes that have struck the capital of Kiev. We're talking about strikes all over the interior of the country. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you look at where Russia has units. They have them all around the country, in other countries.
Absolutely.
The air defense systems in Ukraine, from the Ukrainian report, was saying that they knocked down some of the mortar fire, but Russia disputes that. They say that they've been successful in their attacks. From the north, which is, Russia kind of flanks their north and their eastern borders, and then Belarus from the north. They've got airstrikes and mortar fire coming in directly from Belarus. Yeah. And this is why you're seeing the sanctions
on Belarus, because they're aiding Russia in this.
So Russia tried. They tried. But as we talked about earlier in the stream, Jimmy Dean, you were late. They were going to try to do an American style false flag attack and show videos of a bunch of, people, a bunch of Russian women and children.
I like how you say that's like American thing, where
it's an American thing. The false flag attack as a precursor, that's an American pastime. And our intelligence are like, no, you're not going to do that. If you're going to go into Ukraine, you're going to go into Ukraine on your aggressive stance. Don't give us some of this, half stepping, half gangster bullshit. You're going into Ukraine because you want to, not because, oh my God, they're killing our women and children in Russia. No. We already are going to let the world know that you are fixing to kill your own people and put it on camera. Okay. We already know you're going to do that. So the United States have been openly snitching for the last 5 weeks on Russia. So they couldn't even, they might have let's give Biden this. Biden and his snitching might have saved thousands of Russian lives, because the government didn't have the space to kill those people, because they were already being outed as the aggressors. So you're not going to be like, oh, some Ukrainian people came into Russia. Nope. Nobody's buying that. Look at these fucking pictures, man. This is some real shit. This is some real shit, folks. So, we got a large portion of the eastern border at Donetsk and Luhansk that has already been taken over by separatists. I think that those are Russian people that were pouring in over the border and then claiming that, oh, yeah, we back Russia. We Ukrainians, we back Russia. No, most of the people in Russia don't back what the military is doing. So you can't tell me that Ukrainians are on the Russian side. Most Russians aren't on the Russian side. So get the fuck out of here with that.
It's a smart tactic, right? You had them go in there in that country,
stay
there, and then organize essentially a protest and just side with Russia.
And you look at Crimea, and again, Russia put this into action 8 years ago. For a reason, because you can attack Ukraine from all sides at this point.
Yeah.
And that's really what they wanted. And I think you were talking earlier about the Black Sea.
Yep.
And, what would happen if Ukraine was taken over? Oh, we don't wish to occupy Ukraine. Yeah, right.
You do. They want that waterfront. They've wanted it for the longest time.
Yeah. So... this is look at these old ass tanks. That's going to work against Ukraine. That's not going to work against U.S. forces. It's just not. It's just not. So I wanted, to provide some context there on, what is happening on the ground. what we think is going to happen. For your final thoughts on this, what do you think is causing this, and what do you think are the implications? What do you think we're looking at?
Well, what's causing this is a lot of conflict over decades and decades long. A lot of agreements that even from the European side that were kind of ignored, and certain countries or form Russia didn't agree with. So there's always been that a lot of animosity from Russia towards certain countries like Ukraine, not necessarily Belarus because they fall lockstep with it, but those neighboring countries in that area. So I think that's where a lot of this stems from. I think it also stems from a leader in Putin that doesn't care about human life, doesn't care about what he wants to do in life. Like, he wants to reunite the old USSR. He's an old Kremlin agent. I think some people, you should know that, but some people don't. He was a part of the Kremlin. He was a part of the USSR.
The KGB. He was a KGB agent. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, he wants to be uniting Russia to its old form. So this is just the first step, or I should say the second step after Crimea, in that direction.
Have you seen the shitty cars that they produce? I don't know if you want to go back to the old form.
Well, that being
their technology sucked in the USSR days.
It still sucks.
Yeah.
So, like, when it comes down to it, you have a madman like Putin who wants to, leave his stamp on the world. He doesn't care about how this affects his country. He just wants to go down in history as a figure, as an important figure, because people like madmen like Mussolini, madmen like Hitler, madmen like, you could just name the many dictators and ruthless people that are in charge. They don't necessarily care about what they do and like the morality of things. They care about leaving a legacy, a name behind. That's what's important to him. So I think when Putin gets older, I think there's the reason why this is getting pushed so much is I think Putin realizes he's getting older and he wants to leave his imprint on the world. And he wants to reunite the USSR. And I also, as for what I think is going to happen, I think with these sanctions, it's going to make it very hard for Russia to work. It's going to be very hard for Russia to have any type of military conflict. Russians, even their military equipment, so outdated, even like from 10 years ago, 20 years ago. If a real war did break out, yeah, Russia has some fighter planes, but if you're going to compare technologies to like U.S. aircraft,
they're going to be taken out by drones.
They're going to be absolutely demolished. I'll say this. People will say, well, like, look at the war on terror. Look at the war that we always fight in the Gulf and we don't win. That's a completely different war.
Yeah, because the logistics are totally different over there.
Completely different. Where we're going into a land where people don't even want us there. And that's a whole different discussion. If we go to a more of a traditional warfare where it's not like it is in the Middle East,
I disagree with Jimmy Dean. He doesn't have the backing of the oligarchs. What he has is the iron fist, where if the oligarchs don't do or don't fall in lockstep with what he wants, that they risk being executed themselves.
But I think when it comes down to it, if we go into a conventional warfare, more traditional style, U.S. is king when it comes to that shit. Just look at our military history. Like, if it came down to that and we got involved, it ain't going to end well for Russia. There's going to be a lot of lives lost, and that's the bigger thing. I'm hoping with some sanctions, Russia pulls their head out of their ass, but I highly doubt it. With a man like Putin who's that consumed with trying to reunite the USSR, I don't think, regardless of how many sanctions, he'll drag his country to the fucking dirt with him, to the ground. He doesn't give a fuck about the Russian people. He cares about his own goddamn ego. So what I think is going to happen is I think a war is going to break out, and I don't know if U.S. soldiers will be on the ground, but I kind of assume here in maybe about 6 months, a year time, we'll probably have troops down in the Ukraine front or the Eastern front. So that's kind of my thoughts on it, and just hopefully, like I said, hopefully the sanctions work, but I'm very pessimistic about that.
All right. Well, my thoughts are, you stole a lot of thunder from where I was gonna go with this, but these are my closing thoughts on this. I believe that war will break. because we're dealing with egos. We're not dealing with reasons. Well, when you have a Putin-sized ego, you don't need a reason. I think, and this is something I've been thinking about for the last several days, because unofficially, Vladimir Putin is the richest man in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at it from that point of view, he could just kind of continue to do what he's been doing over the years. Wild excesses of any kind of luxury that anyone has in the world, Vladimir Putin has those things. I think that he could have any woman in the world do anything he wants to have them do.
Yep.
He can get, a one of one, Rolls Royce if he wanted. He could get, a 2 generations ahead private jet. I think that none of these things matter to him because I believe, and I don't have anything to really back that up. This is just my opinion, my non-professional opinion, but I believe that he's a sociopath. Yeah. And I think that for very many, many years, he's been looking to fill a void that he can't fill. He's looking to feel something. He's looking to feel big. He's looking to feel important. He wants to have the respect of everybody in the world. And he has not found a way to do that with wealth. Very much like Jeff Bezos. These are miserable people. They keep trying to fill this void in their souls that they cannot fill with these earthly riches. Yeah. And I think that some people look at Adolf Hitler as this grim, evil character. That's most people. That's most reasonable people. But I think that when you get to the level of power that Putin is at, but he is still looked at as the redheaded stepchild on the world stage. He still doesn't have the respect that he wishes that he has, that he wishes he had, that other countries and other leaders have. I think that the USSR, I don't think he really gives a shit about that either. I think that his legacy is what he cares about. And much like other people, much like most people, he is not willing to do the work that is necessary to do positive things in the world to cement his legacy. So the easiest thing to do is to do harmful things, because that is going to make sure that your name sticks in the minds of everyone in the world. Yep. When every first and second world country in the world is plunged into violent chaos, he can say, I did this. Yep. Me, the powerful Vladimir Putin, I was able to have this effect on the world. Look at how important I am. As a nuclear detonation happens right over his head and his body completely disappears. Yep. Right? He doesn't even care if he dies. He does not care. He wants to make sure that in world history that when you say Putin, that you stop for a second. You give a pause. He only cares that his name rings bells. He does care not for how or why his name rings bells. And that's why these economic sanctions will not work, because he doesn't fucking care. If he really cared about being this great power, then you would see the lives of Russian people be elevated much more than they are. They're not creating anything that is that has any kind of technological advancements. They are relying on the technology of other countries to make it into space. They're not moving human innovation forward. Russia's not doing that. Russia's not moving really anything forward. They are benefiting, the oligarchs are benefiting from the advancements that other inventors have made, but they're not doing anything. So what do? Well, let's start a war because we ain't got shit else for you.
Yep.
And I think that's really, really dangerous. And I think that for the world economy, this is a really, really bad thing for the world economy. I think that there was a very delicate balance, and we saw with the Rona, what happened to the world economy just 1 week after worldwide lockdowns, just 1 week. And then you saw the economic losses around the world for 1 day of shutdown was in the tens of billions per country, right? I think that you're going to have a real upsetting of the economic apple cart. How that is actually going to, what is it actually going to look like? I don't know. I suspect that gas prices are going to go high. I think that costs for food are going to go high. I think that countries that are less fortunate than ours, I'm talking about second world countries, I think you're going to start having them see some of the pain of some of these third world countries. They may not feel all of those consequences, but they are definitely going to feel some of them.
Absolutely.
And again, there is no benefit to Russia. There is zero benefit to Russia for doing this.
But like I said, there might be zero benefit, but in Putin's mind, it's about a legacy.
Yeah, he doesn't care. The thing is, there's no benefit to Putin here.
Nope.
A lot of his riches are tied up overseas. They're not physically, within St. Petersburg or wherever the fuck he's holed up at. So, those are our thoughts on what's going on so far. Of course, this conflict is really just kicking into high gear. We want to thank all of the viewers for hanging out and giving their opinions. Jimmy Dean, iDry we also had probably the most hopeful and the most respectable comment, which would be peace. We've been, even with all of the partisan bullshit that we've seen, we've been living in the most peaceful time in American history.
Yep.
And life is going to get harder on some level for us, no matter what happens next. I just hope that gas prices don't go too high, because I would really like to drive my car before I get hit by a missile. So again, we really want to thank everybody for your participation and for you listening to our opinions here on TSP. Until the next time, we up out of here.
And I guess I'll end it.